10 Profiling Techniques Used to Catch Criminals. The TV show Criminal Minds has sparked a fascination with profiling among many people. Although the techniques depicted in the show may not always align with the reality of profiling, investigators rely on real-life methods to apprehend criminals. Profiling has become an essential tool for law enforcement in solving the most intricate crimes. The process involves scrutinizing data and information from crime scenes, victims, and witnesses to develop a profile of the probable offender. This profile assists investigators in identifying potential suspects and narrowing their search, ultimately resulting in the arrest and conviction of the perpetrator. In this article, we will delve into 10 common profiling techniques that law enforcement employs to solve crimes. Number 10. Investigative Psychology. The field of investigative psychology aims to utilize psychological theories and principles to investigate criminal behavior. This area of study seeks to comprehend the thought processes, behavior, and operations of criminals to develop efficient investigative strategies and techniques. Investigative psychologists scrutinize evidence from crime scenes, conduct interviews with witnesses and suspects, and offer psychological profiles of offenders to assist law enforcement agencies in their investigations. By gaining an understanding of the motivations, thought processes, and behavior of criminals, investigative psychologists can provide law enforcement agencies with the necessary information to more effectively identify, capture, and prosecute offenders. During the 1960s, the Boston Strangler case involved the murder of 13 women in the Boston area. Investigative psychologists analyzed evidence from the crime scenes and conducted interviews with witnesses and suspects to create a psychological profile of the perpetrator. The profile suggested that the killer was probably a sexually motivated individual with a history of violence against women. This data aided investigators in narrowing down their search to identify suspects who matched this profile. Eventually, a suspect named Albert DeSalvo was apprehended and admitted to committing the murders. Number 9. Geographical Profiling. Geographic profiling is a criminal investigation technique that utilizes the locations of crimes to identify the probable area where the offender is based. This technique is founded on the notion that criminals are more likely to operate in areas they are familiar with, and the location of their crimes can provide valuable insights into their behavior and movements. Law enforcement agencies employ geographic profiling to scrutinize the locations of crimes, identify patterns and similarities between them, and narrow down the search for the perpetrator to a specific geographic area. This approach can enhance the efficiency of the investigation and potentially lead to the offender's capture. In the late 1970s and early 1980s, geographic profiling was instrumental in capturing the Yorkshire Ripper, a serial killer who operated in the north of England. Investigators utilized geographic profiling to analyze the locations of his attacks and narrow down the possible area where he was based. This led to the eventual identification, capture, and conviction of Peter Sutcliffe as the Yorkshire Ripper. Number 8. Offender Profiling. Criminal profiling, also known as offender profiling, is a technique utilized by investigators to create a psychological profile of a criminal offender. This technique involves analyzing the offender's behavior, motivations, and personality traits to develop a profile of the type of person who is likely to have committed the crime. Typically, this technique is used in cases where there is little or no physical evidence available, such as in cases of serial murder or rape. The profile created through this technique can help investigators narrow their list of suspects and focus their investigation on those who match the profile. In the case of the BTK, bind, torture, kill, killer, who murdered 10 people in Kansas between 1974 and 1991, offender profiling was crucial. Investigators used this technique to develop a profile of the person likely to have committed the crimes, based on analyzing the killer's behavior, including his use of restraints and killing patterns. The profile helped investigators to narrow down their list of suspects and ultimately led to the arrest and conviction of Dennis Rader, who matched the profile created by investigators. Number 7. Forensic Linguistic Profiling. The technique of forensic linguistic profiling is utilized in criminal investigations to analyze written or spoken language to develop a profile of the author or speaker. This technique is based on the premise that language can provide valuable clues about the author's or speaker's personality, background, and cultural influences. Forensic linguistic profiling assists investigators in building a profile by analyzing the language used in their communications, such as letters, emails, social media posts, or recorded messages. By scrutinizing the language, investigators can identify patterns, such as speech or writing style, specific vocabulary, and syntax, that can provide insights into the author's or speaker's characteristics. In the case of Ted Kaczynski, the Unabomber, forensic linguistic profiling played a crucial role. Investigators used this technique to analyze the language in the Unabomber's manifesto sent to the media. The language analysis helped investigators develop a profile of the author that included characteristics such as a high level of education, a desire for attention, and a belief in the superiority of his ideas. This profile helped them identify and arrest Kaczynski. Number 6. Statistical profiling. The technique of statistical profiling is utilized in criminal investigations to analyze data and statistical information to develop a profile of the probable offender. This technique is based on the premise that certain demographic or socioeconomic factors may be linked to criminal behavior and that these factors can be used to identify potential suspects. Statistical profiling assists investigators in building an offender profile by analyzing crime statistics, demographics, and socioeconomic factors. This information can then be used to narrow down the list of potential suspects and focus the investigation on those who fit the profile. During the 1980s and 1990s, the Seattle area was terrorized by a serial killer known as the Green River Killer, who was responsible for the deaths of at least 49 women. Investigators utilized statistical profiling to examine various data points, including the victims' demographics, lifestyles, and the locations where their bodies were found. The analysis led investigators to conclude that the killer was most likely a white male in his 30s or 40s, who had a history of arrests related to prostitution and a connection to the trucking industry. The profile created by investigators matched the killer's identity, who was later identified as Gary Ridgway. This case is a prime example of how statistical profiling can be used to analyze data and identify patterns that can help investigators solve complex cases. Number 5. Victimology. By analyzing factors such as age, gender, and socioeconomic background, victimology assists investigators in constructing a victim profile. This profile can then be utilized to identify potential suspects and motives for the crime. The case of the Golden State Killer, who committed a series of rapes and murders in California during the 1970s and 1980s, is an excellent example of the use of victimology. Investigators employed victimology to scrutinize the characteristics of the victims and detect patterns that could aid in identifying the offender. The examination disclosed that the killer had a preference for attacking couples in middle-class neighborhoods and that his conduct indicated hostility and aggression towards women. This profile proved to be beneficial for investigators as it enabled them to narrow down their list of suspects, ultimately leading to the arrest and conviction of Joseph James DeAngelo. Number 4. Signature analysis. Signature analysis is a criminal investigation technique that involves scrutinizing the unique characteristics of a crime scene or criminal behavior to identify a particular criminal's distinctive modus operandi, MO. A criminal's signature pertains to the specific and distinct behavior or aspects of the crime scene that they intentionally incorporate into their crimes as a means of gratification, personal satisfaction, or personal expression. By analyzing the crime scene and identifying recurring patterns or elements in the behavior, law enforcement professionals can construct a criminal profile that can be used to narrow down the list of potential suspects and focus the investigation on those who fit the profile. This method has been on the rise in recent times. It played a crucial role in the Zodiac Killer investigation, a case involving multiple murders in California during the late 1960s and early 1970s. Signature analysis was employed by investigators to scrutinize the unique aspects of the crime scenes, such as cryptograms, mocking letters sent to the media and police, and the manner in which the murders were carried out. The examination uncovered that the killer's driving force was a craving for attention and the chance to ridicule law enforcement. While the killer's profile was identified, the case is yet to be solved. Number 3. Behavioral analysis. Behavioral analysis, a technique employed in criminal investigations, focuses on examining an offender's actions to create a profile of their personality, motives, and probable behaviors. The premise of this method is that behavior tends to be consistent across various situations, offering valuable clues about a suspect's traits. By assessing factors such as criminal history, social interactions, and behavioral patterns, investigators can construct a profile of the perpetrator. This information aids in narrowing down potential suspects and concentrating the investigation on those who match the profile. The effectiveness of behavioral analysis was demonstrated in the 2002 DC sniper attacks case. Investigators utilized this technique to study the killer's actions and identify patterns, including target selection, attack methods, and communication with law enforcement. The analysis enabled investigators to develop a profile of the killer as a male in his 20s or 30s with a violent past and a grudge against society. This profile ultimately contributed to the apprehension and conviction of John Allen Muhammad and Lee Boyd Malvo. Number 2. Digital forensic profiling. Digital forensic profiling is a technique employed in criminal investigations to examine digital devices and data, creating a suspect's digital behavior profile. The underlying concept is that digital devices can offer valuable insights into a suspect's actions and online conduct. Investigators can construct an offender profile by analyzing digital evidence, such as emails, social media engagement, and internet browsing history. This information can then be utilized to pinpoint potential suspects and establish motives for the crime. In the 2013 Boston Marathon bombing case, digital forensic profiling played a crucial role. Investigators analyzed data from cell phones and social media accounts to track the suspect's movements and activities leading up to the attack. This examination allowed investigators to develop a profile of the suspects as young, radicalized siblings influenced by extremist ideology. Number 1. Circle theory. Circle theory is a technique utilized by criminal profilers to gain a better understanding of a criminal's self-perception, social identity, and cultural background, resulting in a more precise psychological profile. This approach can assist law enforcement agencies in identifying and capturing suspects more rapidly and effectively. By comprehending the interplay between the inner circle, middle circle, and outer circle, criminal profilers can gain insight into the offender's motivation, behavior, and thought processes. Ted Bundy, a notorious serial killer who murdered at least 30 young women in the 1970s, is a prime example. His circles were as follows. Bundy's inner circle was marked by feelings of inadequacy and low self-esteem, which may have contributed to his desire for control and power over his victims. In Bundy's middle circle, he had a yearning for social status and validation, which prompted him to portray himself as charming and intelligent to his victims. His outer circle was influenced by societal and cultural factors, such as the sexual revolution and the emergence of feminism, which may have impacted his view of women as objects to be dominated and controlled. Applying the circle theory to Ted Bundy's case could have provided investigators and criminal profilers with a more profound comprehension of his motivations and behavior. This knowledge could have aided in identifying and capturing him earlier. Thanks for watching.